Very excited to talk to you today about my work on market design for the child welfare system. This relies heavily on a paper that was published earlier this year with co-authors Mustafa Khan and Onur Kestin of Carnegie Mellon and Utku Unver of Boston College. This market is definitely one that serves a disadvantaged population. You can think of it as inequality of the situations into which children are born, particularly those who experience such negative situations that the child welfare system becomes involved. In the United States, as of the last reporting period, we have 415,000 children in state custody, or in foster care, and of those, about a quarter are to a point where the parental rights of their parents have been terminated and they are classified as waiting for adoption. This is a long process, and these children have high special needs or demographic characteristics that can make them be in the system for a long time. The average time for these 108,000 children who are waiting for adoption is 2.5 years since termination of parental rights. Of the children who enter the system, or the children who exited over this the 1 year before September 2014, 51% were reunified with parents, which is generally looked at as a good outcome. 21% were adopted, but 9%, about 20,000, were emancipated from the system without, or reached the age of majority without parents. They turned 18 and just set loose. For 20 or 30 years, that's been recognized as a very undesirable social outcome and associated with very high levels of incarceration, early pregnancy, and unemployment. So the priority to serve these children is really set forth in...
Sorry, what's the other option?
Oh, there are some group homes, there's just death, there's some other classifications that are sort of temporary, or guardianship with relatives, things like that. Good question. So the priority to serve these children is in the 1997 Adoptions and Safe Families Act. You might see it in the news because the person who shepherded that through Congress was Hillary Clinton. It's about as bipartisan of legislation as anything as you can get. Just read that in 1997 there were 10 Republican senators who had adopted children, including one of the most conservative ones from a generation ago, Jesse Helms, who had adopted a 9-year-old child with cerebral palsy. So many of the important things about market design come from that legislation. It provided subsidies to enable or to break down some of the barriers, the financial barriers for middle-class families to adopt children with special needs. And it's very important for work that happens at the state and county level. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about work with one state, with the Pennsylvania StateWide Adoption Network that runs the Pennsylvania Adoption Exchange. This is a nonprofit that reports directly to the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, basically carries on the work of the government as a contracted nonprofit. Their mission is to find adoptive homes for hard-to-place children in state custody, 15,000 children in foster care in Pennsylvania, 2,000 waiting for adoption. For almost all of them, there is a resource available locally. It's easy to find a family. For about 250 at any given point in time, they are hard-to-place children. So the Pennsylvania Statewide Adoption Network runs a website, adoptpakids.org. You can go on right now and see a list of the children who are looking for adoptive placements. They run live matching events at hotels where people from around the state come together. The children might even make presentations, and families get an opportunity to meet them. The Statewide Adoption Network promotes training, standardization. There are 67 counties in Pennsylvania. The counties actually have the custody of the children, so promoting best practices. They also have to work with a network of about 100 nonprofit organizations that provide many different services, but when you think of the families mostly enter the system through these nonprofit organizations that help them fill out home studies and provide training. One thing that they do, and the focus of this project, we're going to think about inequality in terms of this match recommendation system, both in terms of child outcomes and the family experience. And I'll talk about some things that we learned from this market and some simple interventions that we made to improve the system. There's a legal mandate to provide matches to caseworkers, suggestions. This is definitely not a system of assignment. This is just a recommendation system. You can think of pulling from about 2,000 families who are registered, pulling their files off out of the filing cabinet and throwing them on the desk, electronically speaking, of the caseworkers who are very overburdened and ready to rely on any outside help they can receive searching for families. But they've had significant struggles to their effectiveness, and that's where this project actually originated with a cold call that I made to them, and they were very happy to invite me in, and I'll tell you about some of the things I learned. Getting some data was a struggle. They don't have knowledge. They could have to research each case individually, but there's no comprehensive data set about which children were actually matched with which families at a statewide level. So we relied on a caseworker survey, surveying the caseworkers who represented children who were active. When it comes to these electronic matches, compared to some of the other ways that children find adoptive families in Pennsylvania, the match recommendations, about 2/3 said they never or rarely ever were helped by these suggestions. And the most common thing that was sometimes or often helpful to about 3/4 of the caseworkers were these informal networks with the nonprofit agencies where they would call and say, hey, do you have a family who might be able to help this child? And the approval rating for the match recommendation role was only 32%. So what is this match recommendation process? When children are registered, every adoption system has its own separate set of forms, but in Pennsylvania there are CY-130 and CY-131 forms that have about 100 questions tackling demographics, officially diagnosed special needs, and characteristics, which are essentially informal special needs. The health, the education, the behavioral issues that a child might have, and then also connections with the community and their birth family. The corresponding child and family forms are set up in such a way that you have the child's attributes and the family's preferences for that specific attribute. Here are just a couple of them. We say, does the child have speech problems? Yes, no, or unknown for the child. And the family will say, acceptable, will consider unacceptable for a child who has speech problems. Age is a little bit different, and just to give you an idea of some of these children, the median age is 10 for 283 active, hard-to-place children in Pennsylvania. And for families, they specify a minimum and maximum age. The median minimum age specified by the slightly over 1,000 families who are active in Pennsylvania is 0, but the median maximum age is 10. And we went in and tried to understand what they were doing. What they really wanted was a system of linear weights that took these child attributes and family preferences and selected families. That's really what they wanted to do. They had major problems with their IT provider, so we built them a spreadsheet first to understand it, but then they actually said, oh, could we use this? And that was a starting point for a couple additional improvements that we worked on. So here you enter the child, you run the matches, and then you get the top 5 families or however many families you want with some sort of score between 0 and 100% for each family. And this gave them control over seeing how each of the families was ranked, and you could go in and say, let's see, for the child gender, that was weighted at 100 points, high 100 points, medium 10 points, low 1 point. And this child was a boy, and the family said either, and there you get, started out it was 100 out of 100 points, and then we'll talk about how we went to a solution where it was actually, if you say either and it's male, then you get half credit. If it would have been a boy and the family wanted a boy, then they'd get 100 out of 100. Add them all up, it's basically like computing a test score, and you get your total score. Okay. So one of the things we've noticed, and it's been known for a long time, is that there are inequality of child outcomes based on their characteristics. So we wanted to predict how well a child would be served in this system, what predicts whether they age out of the system, what predicts whether they have a successful adoption, and there are a couple intermediate outcomes about being placed in group homes or with kinship families. And we were able to assemble this data. Sort of the one success story with data in this project is that we were able to identify that for about 1,500 children who were hard to place in Pennsylvania over an 8-year period. So we used linear regression to get interpretable results and sort of backed it up the significance with logistic regression. Started out with 88 factors and narrowed it down to 28. One thing that the people at Swan really wanted was this effect of age upon registration. They always pressure their caseworkers to pursue different paths in parallel. Don't just hope for the time being that some distant relative is going to show up and be willing to adopt this child, but start pursuing adoption through this stranger adoption in conjunction with other strategies that you are pursuing. So we could actually quantify the cost of delay in essentially the child's chance of a successful outcome. At age 8, a 1-year delay drops the success rate by 3%, and when you waiting a year for a 16-year-old reduces that child's chance of getting a permanent placement by almost 9 percentage points. So this helped them motivate getting children registered and doing the search sooner. We also looked at what were some of the significantly negative special needs. Some they had, you can see in this presumed importance column on all the way to the right, what they had initially guessed as low, medium, and high weights for matching. One that was very surprising is that using foul or bad language actually drops the chance of successful adoption by 12 percentage points. So they bumped that up from medium and high and added some. This is one of the characteristics that a child might have. So they were surprised by how that turned out, and then they added some training materials based on that, including the newsletter. Okay, here, start thinking about this situation when it might arise. It might be more important to address this if families don't expect it. So bump that from medium to high, and then there were several related ones all about the child's social connections that appeared up as significantly negative special needs, predicting their chance of success, and that those were all related to the child's social connections. So those were bumped up from low to a high weight, so that it'd hopefully be more likely that the matches that are suggested have families who are more willing to deal with a child whose situation might want to or need to stay connected to their former life. So those are a couple things that we changed as matching tool, hopefully to better predict what families would take which children. Then if we look on the family side, there's an incentive challenge with how you structure the questions and how matches are ranked. Basically, because there is a phone line that makes it very easy to reject, say, oh, here this child's available, you can just say no over the phone very easily. Families who have the time and really want to see all the children who are coming through the system can overstate their preferences, saying I'll take basically any child. And when you're running a system like this, if you have a bunch of families who say I'll take basically any child, that really reduces the system's effectiveness. And on top of that, these are very difficult questions to answer on their own. So even if you don't think of it strictly from a gaming perspective, just from how families interpret the system or the questions, and then also how from the caseworker side, how they struggle to struggle with wanting to find the perfect family This system helps provide a framework. So we made some changes to the procedure. You saw how if you say either a boy or a girl you're willing to adopt, you'd get a relatively lower ranking for that specific score than if you would say I want a boy or I want a girl. So we reward narrow preferences. Also have matching as a batch process. So if one family's bubbling to the top, then they sort of freeze them for the month in which the matching happens. And this tool helps communicate the scores to help the caseworkers think through the trade-offs of the families. As a very quick experiment to analyze the spread, let's take our active families or active children, make 5 matches for each active child, and you get a little over 1,000. If it were perfectly spread out, each family would get 1 match. Before we had the rewards, all those matches went to 79 out of the over 1,000 families, and after we added the reward, that spread increased by about 41%. It's still not perfect. Still have other things to do, but geographic filtering will also, which is one of the things that we added to the tool, will increase that spread too. Okay. So in the remaining couple minutes of the presentation, I want to answer 3 questions that were suggested by the organizers. What's been done in this field that's related to this project? What other market design projects do I think are relevant? And then what are some things to latch onto as researchers, some key elements of this system worth tackling in detail. So it's good to be here in the University of Chicago because actually one of the most prominent early papers on this subject was by Elizabeth Lanz and Richard Posner coming out in 1978, showing that money does have a big role in child adoptions and preferences. That was derided in pages of national newspapers as the baby selling paper. I don't think that was totally fair, but they definitely pointed out an inconvenient truth for society that money does matter, and there are strong preferences for different types of children, and Baccarat put a dollar value on disparity between males and females. Females are generally more preferred. White children, African American children. So you can look at that. There's there's some things within the child welfare field about child outcomes that sort of back this up. That children who are older, children with higher special needs, and children who have certain racial characteristics tend to age out of the system or have negative experiences. Our work, one of the things I forgot to add, and going back to the slide about the bumping up the preferences from low to high, we didn't bump any from high to low. One of the things that did not turn up as significant was that African American designation was not predictive of a negative outcome significantly for the Pennsylvania statewide adoption network. So we hope that that's evidence that tending to the things that you know are particularly hard and throwing extra resources at them can alleviate that type of inequality. Looking at other markets, there's a lot of the value of this network, or why it justifies itself, is that one caseworker in one county can benefit by looking at the counties around it, and having a statewide network provides that visibility. There are two papers related to organ jet, which puts patients on planes to go get kidney transports. That's actually my PhD advisor, Sridhar Tayor's endeavor. And there are a couple studies showing that there are a lot better utilization, and basically outcomes for the lower quality kidneys. And I think that's an analogy to wanting to have better outcomes for those hard to place children. Signaling and platform design is really important. That's not something we implemented in Pennsylvania, but going forward. There are a couple examples in online dating and job markets about constructing these types of signals, maybe free signals that are given, but you have a capacity as to what you can, where you can give those signals. For our setting, that question is Should families be able to see the children and say, I'm particularly interested in these 3 children? Or should they, how would you do it so they can signal these attributes of children are particularly important? And then there are a couple papers as sort of warnings on how signals and network effects can not always work out the way you want. There aren't really any major interventions from economics or operations world. There's one paper that really is the baby selling paper. Utku, my collaborator, apologized that this paper was written about auctioning off children as a proposal, but the second paper there talks a little bit more about the reality of contracting for services in contracting with nonprofits, which is an important part of the system that I haven't addressed. Here's an overview of these placement decision systems that are in practice, Hannah and McRoy. I've worked with Pennsylvania Adoption Exchange. If you see the paper, we also provide a discrete event simulation analysis to show the value of being able to better predict whether families will accept children, and also the value of connecting different geographical regions. But data collection is limited. I'm excited to be working on a consulting project in the future about with a woman who has a startup to help, a nonprofit startup to help another state with its platform, and inspired by some of the talks today to do some about how to do data collection and how to add interventions to that market. I'll skip over the key areas of research, let them up because I'm out of time. But thank you very much.